So now we've gotten to this point and we have most of our graphic elements that we're going to be using for this poster design. The other thing we're going to need to put in here is our photographic elements. So again, this is like a photo montage from a constructivist design, and so I need to include photographic elements. Even before I begin adding the photographic elements, something we can do real quick is start to develop a color scheme that we can work with, or a set of colors that we can use throughout. So I'm going to do that right now. First things first, make sure we are all working in the same workspace. So I'm using Photoshop 2025, and I'm going to use the Essentials workspace. And that way you should see a large layers panel here, and then some of these other ones definitely need to have access to the layers panel. So the other panel you should see is the swatches panel. And so mine looks like this. There's a lot of extra swatches you might have. Just know that some of these just come with the system. Your system will also save a lot of your other colors. So I'm going to quickly make a color scheme right now. So I'm just going to come down here and click the new color group icon. And I'll just name it poster colors. And now that I have that open, I can come over and I can grab the eyedropper tool, or I can hit the I key for the eyedropper, and I can start sampling colors. So I'm going to sample this orange color, and then I'm going to come over here and click save the swatch. Okay, it's going to pull up some other panels. We can just go ahead and close those. But I'm going to go through and give myself a range of colors that I can work with. And you could also import some colors that you have saved from Illustrator. That is another option that you can utilize, but this is pretty quick and easy. All right, so we have our colors here, so we will use those later. Let's go ahead and do what we did before in Illustrator. Let's do File and then Place Embedded. And if we go to the exercise file and go to images, remember we have this like main image here with this kid on a bike. So I want to place that. And then immediately when you place it, it's always good to just hit return first and then hit Command T or Control T to transform. So one thing we can do is we can right click. We can come down here and we can say flip horizontal, and so I have that facing the right direction now. And here in Photoshop in the new versions, you don't need to hold down on Shift to scale proportionally. So instead of holding down on Shift, I'm simply just going to points on the selection and just adjust those manually. So I want this to have a lot of depth, and so I'm going to create a sense of overlap. So I want the kid's head to go across the letter form slightly, and then I'm going to mask away this part on the bike, so I don't need to see the entire wheel. So something like this. Once I have what I like, I'll hit return. Remember, we have it as a layer here. We can move that to the top of the stack. Gotta make sure you're moving and seeing the bar or the blue bar go all the way across all your layers. And then I will move that up here. And then I can put on a mask. So I'll come down here and hit the new mask icon. And if you recall, masks are pretty easy to work with if you just know some of the fundamentals. Black conceals, white reveals. So right now I'm working with black. I can grab my brush tool. I'm going to work with a nice hard brush, and you can adjust the size of your brush using the bracket keys. So I'm using the right bracket key to increase the size, and I'll zoom in. And what I want to do is I want to brush a straight line across the bike wheel. So the way to do that is to click once and release, hold down on the Shift key, move your mouse, and then click again. So I'll do that one more time. I'm going to click once, release, hold down on Shift, come over here, and then click again. And you can see that does an okay job of dealing with that. One thing in the new versions of Photoshop, so if I click right here on the brush settings, is it's not doing a good job with spacing. So I'm actually going to decrease the spacing to 1%, and then I'll do that again. It was just not doing a good job of painting a nice straight line for me. I'm going to go back to the Move tool. So I'll go back here, I'll go to File, Place Embedded, and this time I'm going to look for another PSD. In this case, I'm going to use this one, the Scooter Crew. I'm going to hit Place. First I'll get them on here, I'll hit Return, then I'll hit Command T, and I will scale those so that they can be, and again, remember you're looking for not only just getting imagery in here, but how that imagery reads. And so there's a lot we can do here. For now, I'm going to keep that right there. But for instance, if you're using a mask, you could play around with this sense of overlap. And so when I turn off this layer, we have this part of the graphic here, this green block. You can just watch what I'm doing, but one example of what we could do is we could come over and grab the Magic Wand tool. I could set it to contiguous with a low tolerance, and I could click this, which is just this little block right here. Then I'm going to make the Scooter Crew visible again. I'll click on the mask, and watch this. I can brush this away, and it is only brushing away that part. So I get this nice sense that this couple here is coming out from behind there. All right, so we have to bring in other imagery as well, and so let's get into some more practice with separating objects from their background. We have this image here, and I just want to show you how you can quickly get some of these objects separated from their background. So if I come over to here and I go to where the Magic Wand tool is, we have the Quick Selection tool, which is easy enough. It will try to detect edges and it will make a selection based off of that. But let's try another method. So I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. And the other one I could use is this one, the Object Selection tool. So this is trying to separate foreground from background. And so the computer's using algorithms to figure that out. So if I hover over the truck, it does a pretty good job of identifying the truck itself. I'm going to click once and get a selection based on that. Now, this selection is okay, but you can see right here it didn't select this little metal bracket here on the truck. And then the other thing is I do want some of this shadow. So I can do that real quick by using a quick mask. So I'm going to grab the Move tool just to reset my tools, and then I'm going to hit Q for the quick mask. Now if I hit the Q button again, I'll get out of quick mask mode. So just know when you do this, you'll quickly kind of move in and out of this selection and mask mode. So I'll hit Q for the quick mask. Then I'll grab the brush tool. It's the same principle. We're going to use white to reveal and then black to conceal. So if I come over here with white and I start painting in this area here, okay, I'll start to reveal it. I'm going to hit Command Z because I don't like that it was using a soft brush. So I'm going to make the brush hard again, so 100% hardness. And what I want to do is zoom in, and I want to, using full opacity, reveal this part of the selection so that the computer selects this part of the truck as well. So if I look around, I could look for any other areas where it might not be selecting the things I want. This isn't too big or important of an element in the composition, so I don't need to be too particular about the edges. One thing I want to include is this shadow. So what I could do is slowly move across with the brush and paint in the shadow. But here's a little trick around edges like this where you have a lot of straight sides. I could click once, hold down on the Shift key, and click again. And then I could just slowly paint that edge in, okay, without needing to be so precise with my mouse. And so I'm going to paint in that part of the shadow. I also want this. This is kind of a strong graphic element that I would like to include. And remember, I'm clicking once, holding down on the Shift key, and then clicking again. And that's how we're able to quickly paint in those straighter lines. Now, one thing I don't like is right here you can see a little bit of a light edge. So I'll hit the X key and I will do the reverse. I'll come in and I'll paint in a little bit of that white edge because that's going to stand out, especially if I see it on a dark background. So I'll try to paint away any of those white halos. I'll hit the X key again to go back to revealing the mask, and I'll bring back some of this other. All right, so I have everything identified of what I want to continue to use in the photograph, and everything that's in red is going to be masked away eventually. So if I hit the Q key, I will switch back to a regular selection. And now that I have the part selected that I want, I'm going to come over here and I need to press the mask icon. Make sure your layer is not locked, so it should be unlocked. I'll hit the mask layer, and now I have an object without the background. It's pretty easy to move these from one file to the next. So I'll click on the layer thumbnail, and then I'll hit Command C to copy. I'll come back to the exercise file, and I'll look for a layer that I want to go, this new layer to go on top, and I'll hit Command V, and it'll paste that layer on top. You can see here that I'm going to need this. Okay, over here, I don't want to do too much enlargement because it is a lower resolution image. Eventually I'm going to apply some filters on it, so that will also obscure any resolution issues. Okay, but we want something that looks like that. I'll hit return. The last thing I'm going to try to mask away is this file right here. We have our SUV. Now you can unlock the layer, which is going to give you more options. And when you have images like this where you see a lot of very straight, smooth lines, this is not a good potential for using these other tools. What really is going to fit the bill for something like this is the pen tool. Now just know your pen tool can be used as a selection tool as well. So one thing to take note of is you want to have the mode up here set to path. So I'm on pen tool, and then instead of working in a shape mode, I'm going to work in path mode. And then I will proceed to trace the edges just like I would in the other program that we used with the pen tool, Adobe Illustrator. You'll notice that it's not quite as user-friendly as Illustrator's pen tool. There are slight issues with like visibility of your vector paths and being able to kind of stay on track with that little rubber band. But on the whole, it does a pretty good job. And so I'm going to go through anywhere there are curves, I need to click and drag. And anywhere there are straight lines, I can just click once and then move to the next area. Just as an example, we can also avoid the wheels. Just to take note, you can reset the direction of your vector path by holding down on the Option key or the Alt key and then readjusting your control bar, your control arm. And so I will continue to come in here. There might be an area where I need to come back with the white arrow tool to readjust this, but I just need enough for it to be believable. I'll cut across the middle because I will bring that back with another selection method. And I'm just about done. When I get to the end, I do want to see that there's a circle next to the pen tool. That lets me know that I'm going to close the path. I'm also going to hold down on the Option key and then click and drag, so that way I can really reset that control arm for that. And so now we have a big closed path that we can use as a selection. And so in order to actually use this to make a selection, we're going to use this panel. It's called the Path panel. and whenever you draw something in here, it's going to save your vector paths. It says work path right now, but we can double click it and we can rename it to something like SUV. And that way we know we can always keep this when we need it and we can use it. One thing I said I was going to do is you can always come back over here with your white arrow tool. And if there's parts that weren't quite traced the way you want it, you can readjust these control arms to make sure your vector path is tracing it the right way. Okay, I'm pretty pleased with it, so I'm going to go back to the black arrow. And right up here, I want to make a selection out of this, okay, out of this work path. So I need to have it selected, and then I can come down here to the bottom of the panel, and you can say load path as a selection. You can also right click on it, and you can say make selection. Okay, you don't want to feather the radius on this. Yeah, we want to keep it anti-aliased so we don't see jagged edges. I'll click OK, and now we have a nice crisp selection for this. Now we can continue to modify this by coming up here and using these other selection tools. So in this case, the elliptical marquee tool would be good for the tires and the wheels. So I'm going to select this. And this is important. I'm going to choose to add to the selection. So right up here, I'm going to choose add to selection. And now I can click and drag. I'll hold down on spacebar to reposition and then scale it the way I want it. So I'm going to try to match what's in the photo. And once I like what I have, I'll release and it adds it to the selection. And you can see on here that for these wheels and tires, you actually want to trace a couple of ellipses, and we'll touch up that bottom part in just a second. But we just want to get something that looks real smooth and clean. All right, so I have most of what I need. Remember down here, it didn't get a little bit of that bottom middle part. So easy enough, we can use something like this. We can use our polygonal lasso tool. We just need to make sure we're adding to the selection. And right here, I will draw a straight line across that and close the shape. It will plug that up pretty easy. Same with this part right here. This would look a little too awkward with that little gap. Okay, so I'll close that up. There we go. Now we have a nice selection around this object. So I'm going to go back to layers, make sure the layer's unlocked, and then hit mask. And then just take a look. I mean, if you're still seeing some issues, another thing you can do is come in here with your brush tool, and then in this case, right here, I just feel like that tire looks still a little too awkward. So I'm just going to touch that up using a white brush on that mask over here. So everything looks good. I'm going to go back to the move tool. I'm going to click on the layer thumbnail, Command C, come back to this file, and then I'm going to paste it in here. And so in this case, I want this SUV, and this will be another kind of read or another visual inside of this stop sign. You can always nudge things around by using the arrow keys instead of just using the mouse. So I might want to nudge this around so that it fits in there the way I want it to. So one thing we need to add is a quite antique photo of a boy on a bike. We're going to hold off on that one because I do want to do some photo corrections on that before we move it in here. But for now, we have, I think, a good amount of visual imagery that we can begin working with. All right, so at this point, we have photographic imagery here on our poster. But as a design, it still looks very collage-like. Not that collages can't be great, but it doesn't look like a unified design. There's not a lot of cohesion. Things really do literally look like they're copied and pasted on. So how can we level this up, or at least bring it into a different direction where it does look like things are more cohesive? One thing we can do is start modifying the values and the colors and the effects on these photos. So I'm going to work with this layer right here, it's the truck layer. I'm going to rename it truck so I can identify that a little bit easier. And this is always a good habit to do while you're working, is not work with too many layers that are just like ambiguously named. So I'm going to work with the truck layer. Now, first thing I want to do is I want to give it a little bit of a protective shell, and I want to give myself options when I'm working with the filters. If I don't do this, I'm going to lose out on those options and things will become destructive, meaning I can't go back and change it or tweak it. So if I select this layer here, I can right click or control click, and I could say convert to smart object. And when I do that, it's going to combine the mask together and it's going to make this a smart layer or smart object. Now check this. So the first thing we could do is, let's turn this into just a black and white image just to see what it would look like if we take out all the color info. So with the layer selected, I'll come down here in the layers panel, create new color or adjustment layer. I'm going to choose this, and we have a few options here. One thing I can choose right here is the photo filter. So if I choose the photo filter, okay, I can start to modify, okay, the color that is expressed in the photo. One thing I'll need to do is clip this adjustment onto the truck layer. So if I hold down Option or Alt and hover right in between these two layers, I can then click and I can clip this adjustment so it's only affecting the truck. So if I use this photo filter, you can see this warming filter actually gets rid of some of those blue colors and makes it look more like some of the other warmer colors that are in the poster. So one thing I can do is I can change this color here to be the color of what is on the composition. Now there's some issues here with sampling. Sometimes it doesn't sample the color in the composition. You can also open up your color swatches and choose from it here. But you can see it is overlaying that color onto there. I just feel like this is not enough. I really want to adjust the values on here as well. Now we can come in here and we can adjust levels or curves, brightness and contrast, but there's an even better adjustment we can do for this. So I'm going to take this photo filter and I'm going to drag it onto the trash can icon. I'm going to come in and I'm going to go back to the adjustment layer, and I'm going to choose this one. Okay, it's called Gradient Map. Okay, Gradient Map Adjustment Layer. So when I choose that, okay, it's going to put this adjustment layer here. I'm going to hold down on Option or Alt, hover between the two layers, and then click. So it only clips onto the truck. Then, okay, when I double click on it, it's going to give me this panel. I need to actually click here. This is a gradient. I'm going to click on this gradient and move it over here, and I'm going to toggle this close. Okay, so what we're looking at here is we have our dark colors over here, and we have our light colors over here. And if you map this out, okay, you can see that my dark colors almost have a close to white, and my light colors have white. Let's replace these. So I'm going to also open up, okay, my swatches. I'm going to click on right here, this color stop. And when I click on it, it's going to highlight black. And then I will come over here and sample that blue from our color scheme. And already, okay, it got rid of all that black and all those other colors, and it replaced it with this blue. Okay. And so with the white as well, we could choose white, or we could choose this light cream color here that's also in our composition. We don't need to settle for just these two colors. If I hold down on Option and then click and drag on this color stop, I'll make a copy or another color stop here, and then I could try something like this. I could add the orange onto the midtones. And so now we get something that's really unique. And so as I look at this, there's now a lot of cohesion between the photograph and the composition. They share the same colors, and it's been mapped out over this photo. So that's one thing I want you to do to these photos. I want all these photos to have some kind of color treatment that's either a photo filter or a gradient map. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to apply an actual effect or filter. So I'm going to make sure to select this layer, the truck layer, and I'll come up here to filter. If we come down, we're going to see there's a lot of different filters we can use. Now, we don't want to use a blur filter because blurs are going to de-emphasize things, push them back, and in many cases this will work, but we're not going to use any of the blurs. We're not going to use distorts because it's going to be hard to read our content. We might do this if we want something to read more abstract, okay, and less specific. But one thing we can do is we can start using some of these, the noise, the pixelate, and even the stylize. So the noise here, okay, you could come over to here and you could try something like this, dust and scratches. If I choose this, it's going to try to let me recreate this as though it were an older photo that had some issues with the fidelity, okay, or the details. So that's one option I could use. And so it puts less emphasis on all those fine details and just gives you more of the gestalt of the image. I'll click OK. Now let's say I did that, but I don't want it. I don't want this filter. If I go back to the layer, you can see here that below the layer we have a smart filter, which also has a mask, and okay, we have the ability to turn that filter on and off. And in this case, I can take it, so I can click on it and then drag it here into the trash can. So I could try a whole new one. So I'll go to filter. This time I'll go to here, I'll go to stylize, and I'll try this one, find edges. Okay, so I'll do the find edges, which makes it look pretty interesting. But now I kind of lost some of the effect I had with that gradient map. And I can see it actually like switched or inverted my gradient map. So instead, I'll just go back to the gradient map. I'll double click on it. I'll click on the gradient itself. And then I will switch these color stops. So I'm just clicking and dragging the light one over here and then the dark one over here. And then I'll adjust, okay, this midtone slider so I get something that gives me a little bit more detail and still helps me emphasize this. I could add another filter onto it as well. So I need to make sure the truck layer is selected. I could come up here, I could go to filter, I could go to noise, and I could add some noise to this. Okay, so bring in some graininess or speckliness. And so that's the cool thing about the smart objects is you can continue to add filters, and during this process you can kind of experiment with what works and what doesn't work. Okay, and so that's what I want you guys to do, is I want you to really try to experiment, see what kind of effects you can create, and see what your final product looks like. So right here I have the truck layer, and I have multiple filters on it. I have a gradient map, okay, and this is coming together pretty well. So I want you to apply a gradient map or photo filter, and I want you to apply at least one other filter from here onto these photos. Make sure you can still tell what it is you're looking at, but be creative and see what you can come up with.